sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Okay, so we're diving into this whole AP Rocky trial thing.
Oh, yeah. This one's
Getting pretty crazy.
definitely a deep dive.
We're looking at all the latest news coverage, and wow, it's way more than just like your typical celebrity court case, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've got friendship and fame and...
All these conflicting stories.
Yeah, like what actually happened.
Right.
And I think even if someone isn't like super into celebrity news, this case kind of gets at something we can all relate to, which is like,
Yeah.
how do we figure out the truth when you've got all these different sides and different stories? And
Everyone's saying something different.
exactly. And what's interesting here is it's not just like a he said, she said thing. It's
Yeah.
like all that pressure of fame on top of it, you know, what comes with that.
Oh, totally.
And in this case, it seems like that pressure just kind of like shattered this long-time friendship,
Yeah.
which led to that incident back in 2021 where Rocky allegedly shot at his friend,
Right. AAP error.
AFP Relly, on a street in Hollywood.
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit for people who maybe haven't been following all the headlines.
Okay.
Our main players are AP Rocky, obviously,
Okay.
Rihanna,
Yeah, of course.
his partner, global superstar, and then Relly, who's accusing Rocky of the assault. And these guys go way back.
Right. Yeah, they were part of that AP mob back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
High school in New York.
Like real tight-knit.
Yeah, it was a collective of artists and creatives.
That's cool.
But as Rocky's career started taking off, things seemed to get a little messy, you know?
And that shooting is what landed Rocky in court,
Mhm.
facing those serious charges.
Yeah, and the trial itself has become a huge media thing,
Oh, yeah.
especially with Relly taking the stand and giving some pretty crazy testimony.
It was intense, right?
Oh, yeah. Relly's testimony is definitely the heart of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, he described the shooting in such detail, he even said it felt like a movie.
Oh, wow.
And then when he talked about his hand feeling hot after the shot,
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
that wasn't just some detail to be dramatic, you know?
Right?
Think about it, the heat he felt, it probably came from the gunpowder burning when the bullet went off.
Oh, wow.
So that's like a real visceral reaction, you know?
Yeah.
Speaks to how serious the whole situation could have been.
So Relly is saying Rocky fired a real gun,
Yeah.
and he points to his injured hand and the shell casings he found as proof.
Right, but then Rocky's lawyer is claiming it was all a misunderstanding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're saying he was using a starter pistol.
Like a prop gun.
Exactly, just fires blank.
So they're saying Relly knew it wasn't a real gun, and that's why he wasn't scared.
Right, and that's what's interesting. Like,
Yeah.
if Rocky's lawyer is so sure that Relly knew it was a starter pistol, why even pull out a weapon at all?
That's a good point.
Like, why would you do that if you're trying to calm things down?
Right.
Doesn't really make sense.
So we've got these two totally different stories.
Yeah.
One saying real bullets, the other blanks.
And it's up to the jury to figure out who's telling the truth.
What does that actually mean for them, though?
Well, they have to look at all the evidence
Okay.
and decide how believable Relly and Rocky are.
So it's not just about, like, who tells a better story.
No, it's about who's more believable and whose story makes more sense with all the facts.
And speaking of evidence, there were those text messages that Relly sent to Rocky right after it happened.
Oh, yeah.
What can we get from those?
Those messages can be a game changer.
Really?
Yeah, right after the shooting allegedly happened, Relly messaged Rocky saying he tried to kill him.
Wow.
He even sent pictures of his injured hand and the shell casings.
Oh, wow.
Now, if those casings turn out to be from real bullets,
Yeah.
that could really hurt the defense's story about the starter pistol.
Makes sense.
But the way Rocky responded to those messages was interesting, too.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
So he denied shooting at Relly
Okay.
and even accused Relly of trying to extort him.
Like blackmail.
Basically, yeah, saying Relly was making the whole thing up for money.
Huh.
And that's something you see a lot in these types of cases. Yeah, the defense will try to paint the accuser as someone who's just after money or revenge.
Oh, to make them seem less believable.
Exactly.
So this is already shaping up to be a pretty big legal battle.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got conflicting stories, physical evidence, and now these text messages that could change everything.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget about the wild card in all of this.
Who's that?
Rihanna.
Right.
Her being at the trial just adds another layer of complexity.
It's crazy how much media attention she brings.
Oh, totally.
The article even talked about how they had to ask potential jurors if Rihanna's fame would affect their decision.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Her presence, even without her saying anything, brings this feeling of celebrity and public perception into the courtroom.
Right.
It's almost impossible for the jury to ignore the spotlight on this case and what could happen to both Rocky and Rihanna's careers.
And speaking of Rocky's career, there's a lot riding on what happens in this trial.
Yeah.
A guilty verdict could mean real jail time
Right.
and obviously damage his reputation and affect future projects.
Definitely, he's got a Grammy nomination, a movie with Denzel Washington. He's even co-chairing the Met Gala.
Wow.
This whole thing could derail everything.
So this is where it gets really interesting from a legal standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
So Rocky's facing 2 felony assault charges.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the specifics of those charges and California's sentencing laws, he could be looking at serious time if they find him guilty.
Yeah.
We're talking years behind bars.
Potentially years.
Wow, that's not just like a slap on the wrist.
Oh, it's life-changing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so much at stake for both sides.
Right.
The prosecution will probably try to emphasize the danger of Rocky allegedly firing a gun.
Yeah.
Whether it was loaded with real bullets or blanks.
Still try to paint him as a danger to the public.
But I bet the defense will argue that it was all a misunderstanding.
Yeah, just tempers flaring between old friends.
Yeah.
They'll probably downplay how serious it was and try to show Rocky as someone who made a mistake, maybe acted without thinking but didn't want to hurt anyone.
This is all so fascinating.
Definitely.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's focus on the human impact of all this.
Okay.
Relly's testimony was pretty powerful about how this has affected him.
Yeah.
He talked about getting death threats, being called a snitch, and watching his music career fall apart.
It's tough.
Yeah, it really shows how complicated it can be to come forward with accusations.
Especially when you're going against someone powerful and influential.
It's a reminder that there's always more to the story than just the headlines. There are real people whose lives are really affected by this.
For sure.
But I want to hear more about that
Okay.
and how this whole thing might affect Rocky's career going forward.
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Yeah, Relly's experience really shows what can happen when you go up against someone with a lot of power.
It's like there are consequences.
Definitely. He's basically been shut out from the community he was a part of.
It's sad.
Yeah, it shows you the unwritten rules in these tight groups, especially in hip-hop.
It makes you think about why Relly came forward in the first place.
Yeah.
Was it just about getting justice, or was it more about feeling betrayed?
Right, like needing to tell his side of the story after being pushed aside.
Yeah.
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
We can guess, but only Relly really knows why he did it.
Sure.
But you're right, it adds another layer to this whole thing.
Totally.
It shows how important perception is, especially with someone like A$AP Rocky, who's built this whole public image.
Rocky's kind of known for that bad boy image, right?
Yeah.
Even some of his lyrics talk about violence and street life.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think that affects how people see this case?
It's hard to separate an artist from their work, you know?
Yeah.
Especially when what they're accused of kind of matches their public image.
Right.
It's almost like life imitating art.
Whoa, deep.
And the jury might be influenced by that, whether they realize it or not.
So it's not just about the evidence in court.
Nope, it's about the stories that already exist out there.
And that's one of the things the defense has to deal with.
For sure. They need to make the jury focus on just the facts.
Yeah.
And forget anything they might think about Rocky based on his music or how he acts.
But then the prosecution could use that image against him too, couldn't they?
Absolutely. They might say that Rocky's lyrics and the way he acts show a pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
Like he's prone to aggression or violence.
And try to make him look like someone who would do what Relly's accusing him of.
Exactly.
It's like they're both fighting on two fronts. The legal battle in court and the public opinion battle outside of it.
And all this is happening while he's with Rihanna.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more complicated.
I mean, she was just at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they just had their second baby.
This isn't just a trial. It's a family drama playing out for the whole world to see.
It is. And don't forget, Rihanna is a global icon.
She is.
She's not just a celebrity. She's a businesswoman, a fashion icon. She does philanthropy.
How much do you think her being involved changes how people see this case?
It's hard to say for sure,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a factor.
Okay.
Just her being there, even without saying anything, brings a level of attention and scrutiny that wouldn't be there otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's something the defense has to be careful about.
So they need to keep the focus on the legal stuff, not the celebrity drama.
Right.
It's crazy how this one case brings up so many big issues. Celebrity culture, friendship, the power of public opinion.
It's a lot.
But let's go back to the legal strategy for a minute.
Okay.
If you were advising the defense, what would you tell them to focus on?
If I were them, I'd focus on two main things.
Right.
First, making Relly's testimony seem less believable.
How would they do that?
They need to find anything he said that doesn't add up.
Like inconsistencies?
Yeah, anything that makes his story seem less likely.
Makes sense. And what's the second thing?
Pointing out that there's no real physical evidence.
Like a smoking gun?
Exactly. The prosecution's case seems to be mostly based on what Relly said in those text messages. If the defense can make people doubt that evidence,
Then they could win.
possibly.
So poke holes in the prosecution's story and emphasize that there's no clear proof.
Right.
But what about Rocky himself? Do you think he'll testify?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It could be good for him to tell his side of the story directly to the jury,
Right.
but it's also risky.
How so?
He'd have to answer questions from the prosecution,
Oh, yeah.
which could be really intense and maybe even hurt his case.
It's a gamble.
Definitely he could come off as sincere and believable.
Or he could say something that contradicts himself.
Right, or something that hurts his case.
So it's a big decision.
Yeah, and I'm sure his lawyers are thinking about it carefully.
It could really change the outcome of the trial.
It could.
Speaking of outcomes, let's talk about what's next.
Okay.
We talked about the possibility of a long prison sentence if he's found guilty.
Right.
But even if he's not guilty, how will this affect his career?
Yeah, can he really come back from something like this?
That's a good question.
Even if he's cleared of everything, his reputation has definitely taken a hit.
Yeah, this whole thing has been so public.
It's been everywhere.
It's hard to imagine that that won't have some kind of lasting impact.
I agree, even if he's found not guilty.
Brands might not want to work with him. Fans might turn against him.
It's possible the music industry is tough.
Yeah, a scandal like this can be hard to recover from.
It can.
It's almost like he's facing two punishments.
Mm-hmm.
The legal consequences of the trial, and then the damage to his career even if he wins.
It's a harsh reality.
It is.
But that's how fame works.
Your highs are higher.
But your lows are lower.
Yeah, and in this case, those lows could have a huge impact.
Definitely.
Not just for Rocky's career, but for the whole conversation about responsibility and justice when it comes to celebrities. But before we get into that, I want to know what you think about how this has affected Relly's life.
Yeah.
What do you think his future in the music industry looks like after all this?
Well, that's where things get even more complicated. It's really tough to say what's next for Relly in the music world.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been labeled a snitch, and that's a big deal.
Especially in hip-hop.
Oh, yeah. It carries a lot of weight. It could be really hard for him to rebuild his reputation and gain people's trust again, especially within that community.
So it's not just the legal stuff.
Right. It's the social and professional consequences that stick around even after the trial is over.
This whole thing has really brought some of the darker sides of the music industry to light.
Yeah, those unspoken rules about loyalty and staying silent. It makes you wonder if speaking out was worth it for Relly.
It really does. And it makes me think about Rocky's music, too.
Oh, yeah. How this will affect his creative process.
Will he talk about it in his songs? Will this change his style?
It'll be interesting to see if he leans into that bad boy image even more.
Yeah.
Or if he tries to use his music to show remorse and really deal with what happened.
It's a chance for him to grow as an artist.
It really is. This could be a turning point in his career.
He could come out of this stronger, more thoughtful, with a new depth to his music.
Or he could go back to the same stuff that got him in trouble.
It's a big decision.
It is, and we'll see what path he chooses.
And this case could have a bigger impact on the music industry too, right?
Definitely.
Will other artists be more careful knowing what could happen?
Yeah, will labels start looking more closely at who they sign, thinking about their character and not just their talent?
Maybe this will start a bigger conversation about taking responsibility within the industry.
Not just for artists, but for everyone, executives, producers, the whole system.
Yeah, something's got to change.
It's about time.
This case brings up things that are relevant everywhere, not just in music.
That's true.
Power dynamics, loyalty, the pressure to make it big, the fallout from bad choices.
It shows that even people with fame, fortune, talent, they're still human.
Yeah.
They make mistakes, they get caught up in bad situations.
It's a reminder that actions have consequences.
Always sometimes legal, sometimes social, sometimes both.
Yeah, but always there.
It's something to think about.
It is. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this whole thing.
There's still so much we don't know.
What will the jury decide?
Yeah, what will happen to Rocky and Relly after this is all over? Will the music industry really learn from this?
These are questions that will keep coming up,
For sure.
and we'll be here to discuss it all.
Absolutely.
But for now, it's time to let you, the listener, think about everything we've talked about.
We've gone over the different sides of the story, the legal strategies, the impact of fame and what this has all meant for the people involved.
Yeah.
But now it's your turn to make your own decisions.
If you were on the jury, what would convince you the most?
What would stand out to you?
Would Rocky's fame sway you, or would you just focus on the facts?
Would you consider how this has affected Relly's life?
There are no right or wrong answers.
But it makes you think critically about complicated things and look at your own biases.
And that's why these deep dives are so important.
They're not about giving you all the answers.
It's about asking the right questions.
Yeah. Looking at things from different angles.
And helping you, the listener, think for yourself.
Exactly. So when you see other news stories, other controversial things, remember what we've talked about with the AFP Rocky trial.
Remember to think critically.
Look at all sides of the story.
And see the human side of everyone involved.
Even those who seem larger than life.
Yeah, and remember that finding the truth is a journey.
It takes time.
You have to keep asking questions.
Challenge what you think you know.
And be open to new information.
That's what we want you to take away from this.
Something to remember, even after the headlines disappear.
So thanks for joining us on this depth dive.
We'll see you next time.